Hi, it's Katrina. My friend David is going to be helping me out with the voiceover today, so I hope you enjoy.
Number 10. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. On February 1st, 1959, 9 Russian hikers were trekking through the Ural Mountains when the unimaginable happened. They pitched their tent and settled in for the night, then something unknown happened. The hikers were discovered weeks later on the side of Kholat-Syakhl mountain after being reported missing. A rescue team found a horrific scene. There were clothes strewn across the snow. The side of the tent had been slashed open as if by a great beast with claws. There were also footprints in the snow that showed people running from the tent in their bare feet. Then there were the bodies. It was mysterious because none of the hikers died in the same way. Many of them were brutally mangled, as if they'd been attacked by bears. And yet some also had burn marks and abrasions, as though they'd been tied up and tortured. Several of the hikers were even found down in a ravine where they had tried to carve a makeshift shelter out of the snow and froze to death. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident, and it's a mystery that has never been solved. We have no idea what happened to the Russian hikers in the mountains that night. We don't know what killed them or why they fled their tent half naked. The game Kholat, an indie survival horror developed by a Polish team, is based on the true event. Number 9. The Italian Asylum. Ospedale Psichiatro de Volterra is a real asylum of horrors in the Italian countryside. The asylum is an abandoned ruin, one that hides a terrifying past. It was closed because the patients were being treated so cruelly. Inhumane treatment was pretty typical at insane asylums during the 19th century, so you have to imagine the horror that took place here for it to be shut down. The hospital was founded in 1888 as an establishment for the demented. It was supposed to be an independent village in which the patients being treated for their mental illnesses could roam the grounds freely. The genius behind the idea, Dr. Luigi Scabbia, wanted each patient to have a tailored healing process. The doctor even established a currency that the inmates could use amongst themselves to feel like they were really part of a community. But then the doctor died and things took a turn for the worse. The hospital turned into a facility that was more interested in making money than treating patients. It soon became overpopulated, with an estimated 6,000 people locked up there, with just 2 toilets to be shared between every 200 patients. Things got so bad that the asylum was closed and finally abandoned in 1978. Although the building has been damaged by vandals, most of it is just the way it was left in the 70s. It's such a horrifying place filled with decades of despair that the City of Light video game was based around the Italian Asylum. Number 8. Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper was never caught, has never been identified, and will be remembered for centuries to come. In the summer and fall of 1888, Jack killed 5 women in the Whitechapel district of London. At the time, London had a serious issue with overpopulation, and there was also a prostitution epidemic going on. All 5 of Jack's victims were working ladies of the night. It's believed that Jack paid these women for their services, or at least promised to pay, then killed them with the precision of an expert surgeon. His victims include Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. Most of his victims died fairly quickly by a cut to the throat, but it's what came after that made Jack so notorious. He opened them like an alien trying to do an autopsy on a human for the first time. He then left them on the sidewalk. Annie Chapman was discovered disemboweled with her intestines draped over her shoulders like a scarf. That wasn't even the weirdest part. When doctors examined Annie's body, they found Jack had stolen her uterus. Nobody ever caught Jack the Ripper, but you can certainly try in the Sherlock Holmes vs. Jack the Ripper video game inspired by the true events. Number 7. The Himuro Mansion. The Japanese survival horror cult classic Fatal Frame was inspired by a real Japanese ghost story. The main setting of the game is Himuro Mansion, which happens to be a real place in the Himuro mountain region on the outskirts of Tokyo. According to the real Japanese legend, the mansion was used by dark occultists for a Shinto ritual that involved brutally murdering someone. Every 50 years, a woman was selected to have her limbs yanked off by ropes. The ropes would then be soaked in blood and bound around a gate to ward away bad luck for the next 50 years. It was called the Strangling Ritual. It's unclear if the ritual truly took place in real life. There are a lot of dark rumors surrounding the mansion on Himuro Mountain. Fatal Frame took those rumors and turned them into a frightening video game. But the mansion is still there in the forest, surrounded by 5 mysterious shrines and slowly crumbling into a ruin. It's supposedly many centuries old. The mansion is said to have been abandoned after one of the strangling rituals failed, and the master of the house went nuts and killed his own cult members. And now for number 6, but first it's shout-out time. Big thank you to Sigma Platypus and Clarence Tremaine for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know what other video topics you would like to see. Number 6. The Chuck E. Cheese Massacre. On December 14th, 1993, the unthinkable happened at a Chuck E. Cheese restaurant in Aurora, Colorado. 4 employees were shot and killed, and a 5th was seriously injured. The attack was all because a disgruntled former employee was fired 5 months earlier. The man behind the massacre was 19-year-old Nathan Dunlap. Nathan was furious that he'd been fired from his job at the family restaurant, and he stewed over it for almost half a year before he took his revenge. Nathan entered the restaurant at approximately 9 p.m. He ordered a ham and cheese sandwich, then went into the arcade. 50 minutes later, Nathan hid in the restroom. He waited until the store was closed, crept out of the bathroom, and ambushed his employees with a .25 caliber semi-automatic pistol. Sylvia Crowell was the first to be shot as she cleaned the salad bar. Next was Ben Grant, shot near the eye as he vacuumed the floor. Colleen O'Connor was the 3rd victim, murdered execution style as she pleaded for her life. Then Bobby Stevens, the only one who survived, was shot in the jaw after returning from taking out the trash. The final victim was Marge Kohlberg, the store manager. Nathan had her unlock the safe, then he shot her twice in the head. When the attack was over, Nathan fled the scene with $1,500 in cash and a bag of gaming tokens that he stole. He was arrested 12 hours later and sentenced to death with an additional 108 years. Nathan Dunlap's story is believed to be the inspiration for the wildly popular video game Five Nights at Freddy's. In the game, the player is stuck inside a Chuck E. Cheese-style restaurant and forced to battle the evil animatronics come to life. Number 5. The Andover Witch Trials. In 1634, you were given incentives to move to certain areas in the United States. Many newly blossoming communities were desperate for people, and so you could build your own house for free and start a farm, and you got a nice incentive package to do it. One of these towns was Andover, Massachusetts. The first settlement was established here in 1641 by John Woodbridge. During the Salem witch trials of 1692, more people from Andover than any other local village were accused of practicing witchcraft and arrested. Andover seemed to have the highest concentration of witches in all of New England. The Puritans accused Martha Carrier of being a witch because she spoke her mind too frequently. She was accused of witchcraft by her neighbor, Benjamin Abbott, following a land dispute. It seems pretty obvious in hindsight that Benjamin was using the hysteria of witchcraft to settle the dispute in his favor. He claimed Martha made him sick and killed one of his cows. Martha's entire family was arrested and charged with witchcraft, even her 9-year-old daughter, Margaret. And while most of her family got away and survived, Martha wasn't so lucky. She was sentenced to hang, and she did so on August 19, 1692. She was hanged beside George Burroughs, George Jacobs, John Proctor, and John Willard. Over 40 citizens, most of them women, were accused of witchcraft before the hysteria was over. An estimated 3 were executed, including Martha. The video game The Dark Pictures anthology, Little Hope, is based on the story of these unfortunate people who were condemned to die in 1692. Number 4. Black Dahlia. A woman taking her child for a walk in Los Angeles stumbled upon a terrifying sight on the morning of January 15, 1947. A few feet from the sidewalk was the body of a woman cut in half at the waist. The mother, who discovered the body at first, thought it was a mannequin because of the way it was positioned. Plus, there wasn't a single drop of blood. Someone had put the body there, placed it into a very specific position, and left it there for somebody to find. The FBI and the Los Angeles Police Department worked together during the ensuing investigation. The FBI quickly identified the victim as 22-year-old Elizabeth Short. She was nicknamed the Black Dahlia by the press because it was rumored she liked to wear black clothes and because the Black Dahlia movie had just come out. You really needed to be around in the 1940s to understand the connection. To this day, nobody knows who killed Elizabeth Short. The FBI believed the killer had special skills in dissection because of the way the body was cut. Agents snooped around the University of Southern California Medical School, but they never caught any breaks. It's been almost 80 years exactly, and the case is still unsolved. The case is also one of the true crime stories that inspired the many cases in the video game LA Noire. Number 3. Peller's Castle. Peller's Castle can be found in Sinaia, Romania. It was used as the summer home for the royal Romanian family between 1883 and 1947. The castle itself is tucked away in the remote wilderness of the Carpathian Mountains. It once loomed over a medieval path between Transylvania and Wallachia. On sunny days, Peller's Castle is stunningly bright with its pointed towers and high walls, but by night the castle looks like somewhere you would find a pack of vampires waiting to suck the blood of the town peasants. It's the creepy side of the castle that helped inspire Castle Dimitrescu from the Resident Evil 8 video game. When you put the castles side by side, it's hard to miss the similarities. In the video game, the castle is home to a trio of vampire-like monsters. In reality, Peller's Castle was built in 1839 by Romania's first king, Carol I. It was even the first castle in Europe to be powered by electricity. The castle had its own power plant and central heating. Number 2. H.H. Holmes. H.H. Holmes is often considered the first true American serial killer. He was born in 1861 in New Hampshire and developed a fascination with skeletons at an early age. This fascination with the dead soon encapsulated Holmes's life. He was an extremely deranged individual, but he managed to keep his dark desires mostly to himself during his younger years. He studied medicine at a school in Vermont, went on to the University of Michigan, and then moved to a life of crime. He started out as a con artist. He swindled people out of their money, forged checks, committed insurance fraud, and eventually killed innocents. But what he's most famous for these days is the murder mansion that he built in 1887 in Chicago. Holmes purchased an empty piece of land, then constructed a 3-story building on it. The ground floor was the storefront for a drugstore, the upper portion was a hotel, and the bottom was the basement. Holmes allegedly used the hotel portion to lure tourists into his mansion. Then he killed them and sold their corpses to medical students for quick cash. Holmes, according to his confession, murdered a total of 27 people. Although he was only convicted of murdering a man named Benjamin Petzel. He was executed on May 7, 1896, just before he turned 35. The Dark Pictures Devil in Me video game features a horror house inspired by the very one Holmes allegedly used to murder his victims. Number 1. Silent Hill. The Silent Hill video game came out for the PlayStation in 1999. It was a foggy and creepy experience that would go on to spawn many sequels, most of them based around a spooky town called Silent Hill in West Virginia. And although there is no real town called Silent Hill that inspired the video game, there is a place that's very similar to it in Pennsylvania. When they turned Silent Hill into a feature film in 2006, the creators used the real town of Centralia for their inspiration. In 1962, the rural town of Centralia tried to burn their garbage in a massive dump fire. The fire spread from the landfill into unsealed tunnels from abandoned coal mines underneath the city streets. The fire ignited fumes in the underground tunnels, sparking a fire that burns to this very day. Local firefighters couldn't put out the flames. Nobody knew what to do, and so the government evacuated the town. Centralia is a prohibited place, frequently shrouded in smoke seeping out of the ground, and eerily similar to the video game town of Silent Hill. Have you played any of these horror games based on true events? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Remember to hit subscribe if you haven't yet, and come back soon for more shocking videos from the channel.